I'm glad you said not just product marketing, because the go-to-market model, we've purposely not named that like the product marketing model, because the go-to-market model is just essentially all the different initiatives that you have to piece together in the right order to be effective as a company. And it touches both sales, marketing, and product. So it touches a lot of different roles and disciplines within a company. I do think product marketing plays an integral role in each one of these initiatives. But it is really a model that any company, regardless of how many people they have or what roles and titles they have, can and should install.
Devon, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here, Ivan.
My pleasure. And I'm so much looking forward to this conversation. Just before we kick it off, where are you based?
So I'm based in Denver, Colorado. I was in New York City for like 10 years, but I've been in Denver for nearly 2 years now.
And you were mentioning that it's a very cool destination for outdoor sports such as skiing.
Yeah, that's kind of the big pull to Denver. A lot of people are moving here these days. If you're particularly, interested in being outside, hiking, skiing, mountain biking, camping, all those sorts of things. Denver sort of sits at the base of the Rocky Mountains. It's actually, the city itself is pretty flat. And if you go east, it feels like you're in Kansas. But then quickly when you go west, you hit the Rocky Mountains. So it's a pretty cool destination.
It also sounds like a pretty livable city compared to other busier places.
Yeah, it's a little more calm than what my wife and I are used to back in New York, for sure. The way of life here is a little bit slower, which is nice, but it is still a big city, and the airport here is a huge international airport. So, you can fly pretty much anywhere in the world. We're going to be, my wife and I were planning a trip actually to France, and we're able to get a direct flight from Denver to Paris, both there and back, which is nice and convenient.
Beautiful. Devon, before we jump into today's topics, for the people that don't know you yet, do you mind doing a little bit of introduction, your background, and overall your story?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm the founder and managing partner of Fluvio. Fluvio is a product marketing consulting firm. I started this business 4 years ago. Prior to that, I've been a product marketer for a long time, over a decade, and worked in various roles at companies like Amazon, Etsy, some ad tech companies. So yeah, extensive experience in product marketing, technology, and have been building a consulting firm for the last 4 years focused on that discipline.
And we'll get into that shortly. But before, I'm just curious to learn more about what led you into product marketing. Was that a coincidence? Was it a path that you already have in mind? Because you've been there for quite some time now.
Yeah, definitely was not something I had in mind. I can go back to when I was in college, and my emphasis was communications and media, which I guess blends nicely to marketing, but my focus was journalism specifically and photojournalism. So I minored in photography. I thought I wanted to be a photojournalist, traveling the world, taking photos for editorial and documentary purposes, and got an internship at the New York Times doing that work, got my first job out of school at ESPN, the magazine, as a photo editor. So I sort of started down that path and ultimately recognized that that was going to be a tumultuous career path. Magazines and photography and that whole world was changing very, very quickly. And I was the youngest one in ESPN, the magazine, working at ESPN, the magazine. And I saw the writing on the wall, and I just recognized, I should probably think about making a pivot, and landed at a media agency in New York, sort of an entry-level job, getting paid essentially pennies for, compared to other New York jobs. And really didn't like that, but began to learn more about the world of marketing and advertising. And then I was able to make a pivot from there into an associate product marketing manager job at an ad tech firm. So a company that was selling software to media planners and buyers, which was what I was doing at that agency. So I was able to pivot into product marketing. Didn't really know much about it at the time. And I immediately sort of grasped it and was really good at it and really liked it. And from there, just sort of focused on continuing to grow in that discipline and moved across various companies. And 10 years, 12 years later, founded Fluvio.
So you've been into media, you've been into product marketing, into so many industries. What do you believe were some skills or learnings that helped you today to become a successful entrepreneur? Was there anything specific, any key takeaway that looking at today, you definitely see that as a key pillar of your current activity?
I'd say from a hard skill perspective, writing and communications is extremely important. I've always been a really good writer, and that has paid dividends, I think, as a product marketer and then also as a founder, someone creating and building a company. So as a hard skill, I would say certainly communications. I would say from a soft skill perspective, passion and curiosity are probably two areas that I didn't have in certain parts of my career prior to being a product marketer. But as soon as I became a product marketer at a tech company, I became obsessed with the craft and with the tech field, and I wanted to absorb everything about it. So that sort of curiosity has paid dividends, I believe, as well.
And talking about writing or copywriting, I think that's super evident when I was doing the research and checking your website. The way it's structured and the whole communication is super easy and straightforward. So it really feels like there's a projection of your thought process into your website and also your work. I'm just curious, was that the first really big website or project that you've done? Or did you have any previous experiences that led you to this efficiency into communication?
Well, you could probably go into the Wayback Machine or something where you can look at different versions of websites over time and you'll see that it's evolved. Our website is something we don't treat it as static, like it always is changing. We update it pretty frequently. So it's certainly evolved over time. But I have worked on some websites. When I was at Amazon, I built the go-to-market plan and strategy for two core products for the Amazon's ad business, one called Amazon Attribution, which I built the sort of micro site for all the messaging positioning and try to push for beta signups. And then for Amazon Marketing Cloud as well. So, I have had experience where I was managing products at larger tech firms where I did build some websites and copy. But Fluvio's site has evolved dramatically over time. I mean, when I started the business, the website was primarily a bio on myself because it was just me. And we were only providing consulting services, which we didn't really have well defined, frankly. And 4 years later, we have 10 or so folks on the team, and we've evolved our messaging and positioning to reflect that we're a larger firm now, and we have intellectual property and sort of deep thinking on areas of product marketing and building tech companies, and that comes through on the website. And then we've also formed new services and partnerships, and we've done a lot to the website over the last several years.
What's the one thing that you believe people that are building their personal or professional website should focus on? Is there anything that, in your opinion, the most impactful part or process into building that?
I mean, early on, you absolutely have to focus on telling your narrative and how you're unique and differentiated in what you're doing. So early on, it certainly is about yourself, but then you quickly want to figure out a way of how do you capture what you do really well and your unique thinking and sort of productize that? How do you build in some sort of moat, which in the world of consulting, if you're selling services and selling hours in yourself, you want to create some moat around intellectual property and processes that are unique to you and ultimately your firm as you grow. So that's something that is sort of like step two. But step one is absolutely you're sort of advertising yourself, which can feel weird, but it becomes a little bit more comfortable.
All right. Let's get back into your story. I'm curious to hear about your drivers because you mentioned that you've been working into media for some big names. then you changed into product marketing, again, with big companies and names such as Amazon. What drove you to going to the next level or building your own business? Was there anything specific?
Well, I'll start all the way back in that I think there's just a mentality that some folks have that ultimately leads them to starting their own business. I mean, my family has sort of done this. My dad is a lawyer. He graduated with a law degree and then started at a large law firm. And within a year, recognized that he wasn't going to be this corporate lawyer and couldn't work in that big system. And he left within a year and started his own law firm with no clients and sort of built up his own small niche law firm for decades. And I'm sure there's part of that upbringing that has installed this sort of mentality in me that you can do your own thing. And that's sort of something I've always had inherently built in the back of my mind. I worked at these big companies like Amazon and Etsy and Tremor Video, which is a publicly traded company. But I don't think I ever truly saw myself as someone who would be in that large enterprise corporate environment for my whole career. I enjoyed it. I did well there, but I always wanted to do something where I had more autonomy, frankly, and felt more empowered. I thought for a long time that I would join a startup at a very young, stage, like seed stage startup, where I would be some leader there. But I didn't know what that would be. And I was just sort of waiting for that moment to happen. And meanwhile, while I was at Amazon, I was hiring for my team that I was, just building out. And I was surprised and frustrated with how difficult it was to find, attract, hire great talent. And I started to think through why that's the case. And it felt like product marketing, and again, this is about 5 or so years ago, that product marketing had recently really exploded. And you saw every technology company across the spectrum, from Series A all the way up to publicly traded, they were heavily investing in building product marketing teams. At the same time, product marketing hadn't been around for that long. It was still, and still is today, a little bit of a nascent role. And so there's just this supply-demand imbalance taking place. And I recognized that. And I thought, well, what's a solution to this very obvious problem? And product marketing consulting services felt right. And so I searched product marketing consulting in Google, and basically nothing came up. A couple, websites that really aren't product marketing specific. But for the most part, it was a category that didn't seem to exist. And so I thought that there was an opportunity there, and slowly started chipping away at building Fluvio, ultimately landing a client. And when I landed a 6-month client, basically contracting me for 20 hours a week, I put my time in at Amazon and I focused on Fluvio full time.
And you made it a long way. So I've seen that you've been nominated in 2020 as one of the top product marketing consultants. So first of all, congratulations on that. I think it's a great achievement. I'm curious, what were your learnings, and what advice would you give for aspiring people, not only in product marketing, but also improving themselves and wanting to get to the top? Do you have any suggestion or recommendation on the approach and principles that would work transversally?
Yeah, I think everyone should identify their own principles. So I'll start there. At Amazon, I learned a lot from the culture there. I think there's a lot of things that Amazon does really, really well. One of those is establishing core leadership principles that are sort of baked into the culture. I think there's 12 or 14 now, can't remember, but they are integral to how decisions based on those principles and cite the principles. And they're real things at the company. It's not just BS. And when I started to think about creating a business and Fluvio and what did I want to build it on, I started to think about my own principles. And I actually read a book called Principles by Ray Dalio. And the combination of reading that book and thinking about Amazon and how Amazon was built and reading about the history of Amazon led me to establish principles for the business, thinking about what I've done well in my career and how I want that to sort of be built into the culture of the company. So it's not just me. And I established, at the time, there was 3 principles that I established, and now we have 4, and I hope to grow them over time. But I do think everyone should go through an exercise of establishing their own principles. What do you do that's unique or that sets you apart from others? And really document those and lean into those as you think about creating your business. And that can help you with even your own positioning of how you're different from others. Because ultimately, if you're selling your own services, that is the positioning. It's yourself, your processes, what you care about. Another thing to think about when you're creating a company or a business or just trying to progress that I found to be critical is your mentality. So I mentioned curiosity and really just caring deeply about doing something so it doesn't feel like work. I think there's a lot of people that like the idea of things and they like the idea of creating a company or they like the idea of this title, but they actually don't care about it. They're not obsessed with it. And I became obsessed with the idea of making Fluvio successful. And I think in general, I have that attitude. I mean, when I was growing up, I became obsessed with golf. I was a very competitive golfer. I was just obsessed with it, thinking about it all the time, wanting to practice, but it didn't feel like practice. It was fun. So I think you have to have this like obsession with it. And then once you sort of reach the point of, okay, this is working, I'm getting some momentum, you have to expect that some things are going to go wrong. And you have to be able to deal with adversity really well and fight a lot. I think that's the truth of creating a business is a lot of people will see from the outside and think that everything's going really well and it's going up and to the right. But the reality is every week there's a challenge and there are things that happen that will challenge your mental state and you have to really drive through that adversity on a regular basis. So I just threw a lot at you, but those are my thoughts.
That's so true. And I was also thinking, do you see any correlation in these principles, attitude, fighting for it between the job and the time outside work? So let's say, do you feel that you're applying those same principles at Fluvio and also outside in your day-to-day life, or they could be different and having different approaches at the same time?
No, I think I probably am very similar in the way I work, in the way I build Fluvio, the same way I am personally outside of working. I think that my mentality is probably the same. I don't know if that works for everyone. There might be some folks who compartmentalize and they have like the work persona and then they're very different. But no, I'm pretty, maybe not intense, but similar to intense. I'm competitive. I can go super deep down certain holes, like thinking very deeply about something, become obsessed with certain ideas, and then I have to see them through. So I do think that there's, part of me and who I am organically in the world and how that's worked itself into the company that I'm creating. And I'm sure every founder to some degree has the same thing happening.
Yeah, I also agree. I also feel that the way you do one thing, you do everything or most of the things. So I definitely see that this attitude, it gets impacted across everything. Yes.
The other thing, sorry to interrupt you, Ivan, is I know you have some athletic background, right?
Yes, indeed. That's why I asked the question, because I find the same thing.
Yeah. I think that that's actually really been an important part for me. And I do think that, and it maybe athleticism and sports is just one thing. There could be another hobby or area of interest outside of sports, but athletes, there's a lot that I've learned in my career in golf. I played college golf. I at one point wanted to be a professional golfer until I realized I think it was a little bit of out of reach for me. But there's a lot that I learned around the discipline, strategy, being patient, putting in a lot of hard work. Only 5% of golf ends up being fulfilling. The other 95% is sort of a disappointment. I do think that there was a ton that I learned just inherently through growing up as a competitive athlete that has lent itself nicely to operating in the world of business and creating a company.
Tell me more about it. I'm very curious there.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it depends on the sport. I'll focus on golf because that's what I did focus on. I played a lot of sports growing up, but ultimately I chose golf because that's where I had the highest aptitude. I was good at it and I really loved doing it. But golf is like, every shot is different and you are never perfect. You have to quickly kind of forget about the bad things that you've just done. Say like you get a double bogey on a hole is really, really bad. You have to quickly put that out of your mind on the next shot because you never know what the next shot could bring. You can rebound really quickly. You also have to, as you're playing, think very strategically. So you have to make decisions where you're evaluating the risk versus the potential benefit. So if there's a 2 out of 10 chance that you're going to carry the water and hit the green, which could lead to a birdie, but there's a 7 out of 10 that's going to, go in the water, and then a 1 out of 10 that it goes in the bunker. You have to quickly kind of do that analysis in your head and make the decision. And there are some golfers that are exceptionally talented, but maybe don't have the right mentality and would go for that shot. And then there are folks, bucket myself in here, that maybe is not as talented as a lot of the golfers that I played in college or in like amateur events after college. But I would make that decision. And it's a little bit more conservative, but the odds are with you in that scenario. So I think I learned strategy and perseverance through that game, and then just dedication and obsession, like I talked about before. You have to put in an exceptional amount of hours to master anything. Again, I know sports, I'm talking about sports, but you can bucket this into a lot of different activities. You got to put in a lot of time, energy, and you have to really care about it and have this vision for why you're doing this, what the benefit is sort of down the line.
Let's talk about hiring or building teams. And let's put aside for a moment the hard skills, in your case, the product marketing skills that you look for in candidates for your team. What other things are you looking for? Do you ever get into these kind of discussions about tackling challenges or side projects or interests like sports? What's your ideal person that you would like to get inside your team?
Yeah. So from a hard skill perspective, I think your point, like I can gauge your skill set as a product marketer. I think that's a prerequisite to, working at Fluvio. So it's sort of like check the box. You won't get through the filter if you don't have sufficient experience in product marketing and a skill set that folks can speak to or I can sort of sense. From a soft skill perspective, I do think people that are very, very passionate about certain subjects work nicely into product marketers. So looking for sort of, experience as an athlete or past hobbies that they excelled in, great. The other element that we look for is soft skills. So being able to communicate really, really well and build trust with folks. Because as a product marketing consultant, again, you're being hired for being a great product marketer. Again, prerequisite, yes, you have that, check the box. The other element is instilling trust in folks, having clients really like you and value your opinion, who want to proactively reach out to you and tell them about what they're working on and get your perspective on it. People that are able to really form real connections with other individuals. That is something that's really difficult to gauge in an interview process. And so that's something we've really focused on. And when I go through interviews, I base them off of our principles at Fluvio. Mm-hmm. So similar to what you mentioned, like asking questions around challenges they've had to overcome, we have a set of questions that tie into our principles. I learned this while I was at Amazon and I was interviewing at Amazon. Basically, you'd have you'd get assigned to, I think it was 3 leadership principles that you had to test on. And then there were certain questions that aligned to the principles. So I've learned that and I've developed that into our processes here at Fluvio. We have 4 principles, as I mentioned. We have speed matters, accountability drives progress, positivity rules, and determination is the difference. And so when I'm interviewing folks, I'll ask for, tell me a time when you had to do X, Y, Z. And the reason why I'm asking that question is it will tie into one of those leadership principles. And if they show that they have those sort of baked into who they are, then, that means they're sort of passing the test, and they have to do that for all the principles. That's my approach as the founder managing partner. But then I'll have our principal consultants or other folks in the team go through their interview rounds, and they'll focus on their own sort of unique process that they focus on. One focuses primarily on soft skills, and the other will go into a little bit more sort of like hard skill questioning. But my emphasis is always on those principles.
One of my favorite questions when interviewing candidates is to ask them what did they do to prepare for this interview. And I always find that people pause for a couple of seconds before answering because they want to make sure that they provide a back answer. What's your favorite question during interviews?
Oh man, that's a tough question. But going back to what you say, I like to see, so this isn't a question, but I like to see that people have done a lot of research on Fluvio and they sort of position themselves nicely for what we're offering. So people that have jumped around to different roles, different jobs, different companies, having them tell me why that is a benefit to Fluvio, right? So I tend to feel maybe stagnant after a year or so at a company and I like change. Well, at Fluvio, I know that I'll be working across a number of clients and industries and products, and that will keep me super engaged. That's why I'm so interested in coming to Fluvio, because I don't think another company can give me that. That's an example. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of instances where I'm interviewing folks and it's very evident they don't know that much about Fluvio. And I hate that. I just want to cut the interview at that point. If they don't know like how big we are, what we focus on, what our services are, what our like operating model is, our go-to-market model. If they haven't even looked at our website for more than 10 minutes, I'll sense that. And again, it goes back to like caring deeply. If you care deeply about getting that job, you should be obsessively researching Fluvio. You should be looking at all the clients we work with, when we started, who's on the team, where they went to school, what companies they worked for, if they have any connections with those people. That's what I would do if I wanted to get a job. So if you don't have that mentality, you're probably not going to get through our filter. They said, I'd like to think so. And this actually reminds me of a great quote I heard on a podcast. I can't remember where, but a couple of weeks ago, I heard this quote and I do think it's super meaningful. I think it's from Teddy Roosevelt, president here in the US at some point. I don't know what years. And he said, let's see, what is it? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I thought that was so good and sort of reflects what I'm talking about here. You really have to care deeply about whatever you're doing in order for you to, have an opportunity. I think that that's the case with building a company. That's the case with getting a job. That's the case with getting a promotion. All of these things. It ultimately boils all the way down to, do you just care a lot about it or do you not?
Yeah. Okay. Let me get back 1 second because I wanted to ask a follow-up on the go-to-market, but we'll get there. Or actually, let's get into that now because I think that's one of the most interesting pages of your website, the model that you're using. What makes it so unique and effective? And let's try to think in terms of principles that can be applied not only in marketing and in product marketing, but overall, what have you learned in your experience in go-to-market and what are the common mistakes? And on the other side, the tactics that have driven, in your experience, the most results?
Yeah, I'm glad you said not just product marketing, because the go-to-market model, we've purposely not named that like the product marketing model, because the go-to-market model is just essentially all the different initiatives that you have to piece together in the right order to be effective as a company. And it touches both sales, marketing, and product. So it touches a lot of different roles and disciplines within a company. I do think product marketing plays an integral role in each one of these initiatives. But it is really a model that any company, regardless of how many people they have or what roles and titles they have, can and should install. It's 23 initiatives, so it's a lot. It's broken out as our website. What makes it very unique is that it's almost a flywheel. It's cyclical.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a launch process that most folks work off of, which is you start here and you end here at launch. Rather, it's a whole set of things that are always on. And the more you refine and you put in, the faster and better, more efficient the go-to-market model will sort of hum. It's almost like an engine. And that's sort of why we've tried to visualize it that way. You'll notice it's almost like a gear. So I think the biggest thing that we've learned is that most companies aren't taking what they've learned post-launch, launching a new product, launching new packaging and pricing, launching in a new market. They're not taking those learnings and putting a mechanism in place to inject them and optimize the foundational elements. So whether it's ideal customer profile mapping, customer journey mapping, understanding the buying committee and personas involved, understanding the competitive ecosystem, which might evolve post-launch, depending on what you're launching or where you're launching it, or just what's happening in market. Those sort of things, a lot of companies will build those, but they won't touch them for years. And they're not utilized on a day-to-day basis across teams. Almost every client that we work with, we go through this sort of go-to-market assessment. We find what they have. We interview people. We sort of go through our process. Most of these companies have some of these things in place, but more often than not, they're going to say, we don't know if it's still accurate or not. It's probably stale. No one really touches it. And it's not integrated into any processes. So take it for a grain of salt, but we do have it. It's very rare that we come into a circumstance where no one has done that work. It's not all put together and it's not actually being utilized in the right way.
And you pair that with one or more product marketing consultants supporting into this assessment. Is there any approach that a company or a person can do to assess their go-to-market motion without needing to rely on an external person or expert?
Yeah. So if you could probably go through your own exercise just to make sure you have these building blocks in place. So, if you go to our website and you find yourself on the go-to-market model page, you'll see all 23 initiatives. You should grasp what each one is. If you're not familiar with one of them, I'm sure you can do a search and you can find out what they are. There's also a number of resources we have on our website. We write a bunch of articles. We sort of break down the model, and then we cover off on individual sections. So you can certainly learn more on our website. The other opportunity would be we do have a go-to-market assessment product. So that is $500. You could go through that. That will go through, you basically go through a 15 or 20 minute quiz or assessment. We get that information. We build a sort of spider graph, and then we also will review it. We'll use consulting hours to review it and write up recommendations and insights based on the data. So it's both qualitative and quantitative. So that doesn't, you don't have to be a Fluvio client to get that assessment. You can actually just fill it out on our website.
Right. The other part of the website that I found very fascinating is the Launchpad. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about it and why did you came with this part or this initiative?
Yeah. Well, why don't I start with why we've expanded our services? And Launchpad is probably the most intriguing to folks and I think has a long runway here. But we've focused the business over the first 2 years on solely deep embedded consulting work. So when we work with clients, we will basically embed a team of consultants to work on big, important go-to-market initiatives. So you'll usually get 2 to 3 folks ingrained into your company. They get company email addresses, access to Slack, Teams, whatever, comms tools. They're almost treated like a part of your company. So that's what's grown our business significantly over the first several years. But as we were building that out, we did recognize that we couldn't service the full spectrum of companies that would want to tap our resources. We had startups sort of knocking on our door. We had companies asking us about other things. And so we sort of have built bookends to that deep embedded consulting work, which is still our core. On the sort of front end of that is workshops. Workshops is targeted towards startups. Think seed to Series B startups who want to gain alignment on their core positioning in market and how to market and message themselves effectively to the right audience. So in that service, we come in for 2 days and we put usually the executive team or department heads through a series of thematic sort of exercises. Our goal is to get them all agreeing, and then we will sort of nail their positioning alongside them and then develop messaging and maybe a core asset like a pitch deck or homepage copy for them. Again, that's sort of you sort of dipping your toes into what we can do for you. And it's best for startups. We've had some large companies want that same sort of service. Typically during offsites, they want their team sort of galvanized on sort of core positioning work or doing individual positioning for their product line. So we'll do that too. And then on the other end of the spectrum is Fluvio Launchpad, which is what you asked about. That is our hiring service. So this came about because as we're working with clients, we're helping them establish the product marketing discipline, identifying areas they can improve and grow. And we're never meant to be there in perpetuity. We're not an agency that just sits on this client forever. We're fairly premium. So you hire us to get the best work done, the most important go-to-market initiatives. We're going to tackle it. And we're going to help you install the product marketing foundation while we're there. But as we wrap up, we know that you're going to have to continue to hire for your team. And over the first several years, we helped, chief marketing officers, chief product officers, and CEOs define how product marketing should evolve and what roles they should hire for. And we did that sort of organically, but we recognized that taking that to the next level, we could help clients actually fill those roles. So now we have Fluvio Launchpad, which is our contract to hire service. So as we've defined these roles, we'll sort of work with executive teams to figure out what that sort of hiring plan is. We can go out and recruit folks from our network. And now we have dozens and dozens of people that have already signed up to be a Launchpad candidate. And we're partners with the Product Marketing Alliance, so we can recruit from their database. We find the right people, we present them to our clients. They can say, yes, on this person, we do pros and cons and fit analysis. And then we will contract that individual in, usually full time, to work with that client over a period of time, say 3 months. And then at the end of that contract, the two parties, the product marketer and the company, can decide if it's a fit. And if it's a fit, they're matched, and that person goes full-time W-2 into that organization. And Fluvio will get a recruiting fee on that. So, we really only get paid substantially if it's a match. So that is something that we've built out over the last several years, and we're getting a lot of interest from that. We're now signing a lot of clients up to that. We're thinking about expanding that into a standalone service so that it doesn't require you to be a Fluvio consulting client, which is historically how we've deployed that service as a secondary service. Now we're thinking there are so many companies that need to hire product marketers. Finding, hiring, and retaining product marketers, there's a lot of challenges with that process. Recruiting firms don't have the expertise to do it. HR teams don't really fully understand product marketing, and product marketers are so heads down doing what they're doing, they can't possibly invest the amount of time required to find, attract, and recruit these people. So we think that there's a huge opportunity there.
And the reason why I find this topic very interesting, and I've been there too, is because many people are searching for a dream job or the next move, but they might feel stuck sometimes. They might not know how to make the leap. What advice would you have to someone feeling stuck in the career that can be inspired by the learnings from Launchpad?
Yeah, well, yeah, you bring up a good point in that I think Launchpad is an interesting avenue for people that have maybe found themselves in a situation that was sold to them differently than the reality. There's a lot of times where product marketers step into a situation where they think that they're going to be valued at some high level. And the reality is the company they're joining doesn't fully grasp product marketing and doesn't value it the way in which it should be valued, which means they're not going to be doing high impactful work, which means they're not going to feel fulfilled. And that happens a lot in product marketing, unfortunately. With Fluvio Launchpad, that helps folks like that because one, the clients that are hiring us to do this, by virtue of them paying us to do that as a premium, it shows that they value product marketing. They're putting money into this. They're not just saying this is, headcount on our, annual budget that we have to hire for. So we're doing it. No, they're reaching out to Fluvio saying, we want the best firm who knows product marketing in and out to help us fill this role. So you're instantly getting a filter for companies that value product marketing. And then because it's a contract to hire process, you're going to actually be able to work there for 3 or so months and really get an understanding of whether or not it's the right fit. So I do think that that's actually a huge part of the value prop from the talent side of the marketplace.
Yes, I fully agree. And by the way, we talked today a lot about product marketing, and I know you have so many discussions in your podcasts about product marketing, and I've heard you saying that so many times that in some places it still feels misunderstood, in some places there are lots of confusion, other times they don't feel valued. Do you mind spending just a couple of minutes providing your definition of product marketing and why it's so relevant today?
Yeah, product marketing is really a connective tissue where the voice of customer, I think, would be like the simplest way, but we're the connective tissue between departments. Usually that's marketing, sales, and product. And so when product marketing is well functioning in a company, it means that products are making their way into market successfully. Customers love the products that they're utilizing. And then it also means that intelligence from the market and customers is influencing how products are being built. So that's an area of product marketing that I think a lot of companies still have room to improve, frankly, is the sort of inbound nature of product marketing. Great product marketers are really in tune with the market, both sort of the competitive ecosystem they sit within, but also just the market trends, and have a vision for what's going to be happening over the next several years. And they know customers in and out. They know exactly who we're building products for, what they care about, and how they're going to use them. And so product marketers who have that knowledge should be helping inform what products are being built, what takes priority, what features are required. And there's a lot of companies that simply don't have that voice that product marketing provides embedded and injected into their product development processes.
Thank you. I'm so lucky that we're recording this part, and I believe this is going to be one of the main clips that we will extrapolate from this session. Devon, I want to circle back 1 second on the name Fluvio. So, doing a bit of research, you talk many times about erosion, about growth, adaptation. So, tell me more about these principles. How can they be applied in career transitions, at companies, and overall in personal and professional growth?
Yeah. So Fluvio is a play on the fluvial process. The fluvial process is the sort of technical or scientific term for the process of erosion. And that's why I named the company, is because I wanted it to be based off of erosion. And the reason is I think the best companies and the best people, frankly, they don't shy away from change. They actually embrace change. They take advantage of change. So that's sort of the concept. And, you can look at trends like AI, for example, artificial intelligence, LLMs. there's obviously this huge shift underway. And there are going to be companies in a time like this that their whole business model might be disrupted. And companies that find themselves in that situation will likely tend to feel like they have to sort of fight against that trend and say, no, like that's not going to happen. That's not going to come to fruition. What we're doing is better, and here's why. And this is just an example. My thinking would be that's not what you should do. You should immediately recognize what's occurring, and you should think about how I can actually take advantage of that and embrace it. You might have to change your business model. You might have to change the structure of your company. You might have to move away from your core product. But the sooner you can make that decision and the sooner you can commit to change, the more likely you're going to survive. And really, that's what it's like, survive or die in a situation like that. Again, that's just one example, but I really do believe that people that are able to seek changes and take advantage of them versus fight against them are better off than those that are unable to do that. And you can think about individuals, doing the same thing as well.
And you have a whole show about it, about embracing erosion. And just before we wrap up, because I'm realizing that we're running short on time, do you mind sharing a bit about the show and how did you came up with this name or approach about embracing erosion?
Yeah, so embracing erosion is sort of Fluvio's tagline. So I thought, why not just create the title of the podcast to align with our brand? And it's a podcast in which I have long form discussions, not too dissimilar to this, where I have on generally, chief marketing officers, chief product officers, vice presidents, founders, CEOs, investors, and people that have been successful in their careers and at their companies, and ideally aligning to this concept that they've been able to embrace change and adapt over time. But yeah, again, it's a long form sort of discussion where we really break down their career, their unique way of thinking, how they are as a leader, what characteristics they think people can build in order to become more effective leader, and how to embrace change and be a successful leader. I've been doing that for over a year now, which is pretty crazy. The concept came to me after a trip I had actually in Italy. I was in Italy on just a trip, and I was listening to a podcast from a very small VC venture capitalist firm. And they were just interviewing portfolio company founders and going through, how they built the company. And I thought it was a really interesting concept. And I could tell that it wasn't something that was, produced by this big production company. It was something that you can do pretty easily. And I was thinking about my network that I've built as I've grown Fluvio out, all the leaders that I get the opportunity to not just meet, but actually work with, and how I could expose my broader audience to those minds. And I thought it was a good opportunity to, bring people into what I was able to experience as a founder of Fluvio. And I also, from a tactical standpoint, was thinking about how can we have a broader voice in market and expose more people to Fluvio and the caliber of thinking that we bring. And I also didn't want to write a newsletter. And so I thought, well, it's either a newsletter or a podcast for this sort of thought leadership. And I think a podcast sounds more fun. And it's really not a chore for me. It's probably not for you either. I enjoy speaking with people. I enjoy learning from people. And it's been fun to be doing that for just over a year now.
Yes, and I will definitely invite you for a take two because I believe that these topics deserve much more time and deep dive. But let's pause it here for the moment. Devon, we're getting to the end. Before we close, where can people find you?
Yeah, people can find me on LinkedIn. Search Devon O'Rourke. That's the best avenue. I don't do much else anywhere else. I've sort of condensed my focus to LinkedIn. And you can reach out to me. I'm fairly available. I like to do networking calls. So feel free to reach out to me. And then if you want to learn more about Fluvio, you can go to Fluvio Marketing. We have a number of resources on our blog, a ton of articles. Consultants do a lot of work making sure that when they're working on a client and they're tackling these big go-to-market challenges, how do we pull information and insights out from that and make sure that we share that to the broader market? So there should be a ton of resources there for you.
Perfect. We'll link everything in the show notes. Devon, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you, and speak soon.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ivan. It's been a pleasure to be on the podcast.